If you look at the most evil people in human history, who everyone would agree the most evil, are the extremes of every ideology. Hitler, Stalin, Osama bin Laden, right? Whichever ones you want to pick. And you can go on. What do they all have in common? An obsessive hatred of the Jew. So what does that tell you? In the psyche of the darkest, most depraved parts of humanity, in the most evil parts of the world, darkness and evil hates what stands for good and light. But what you can do is shine more light in the world.
Hello everybody and welcome to JTV. I think a lot of people, both Jewish and non-Jewish, over the past few months, certainly since October 7th, have been pretty shocked at the levels of hatred, the double standards, the lies, the demonization. You know, we knew anti-Semitism was something that always existed, but I think we kind of had a part of our minds thought, maybe we've graduated from such a severe and overt level of hatred. And yet it seems there are still many pockets of society that seem to be addicted to it. And I think it's left some people wondering, is this just like an incurable madness? And do we have any hope at trying to deal with this this severe and deep hatred? And our guest today, Rabbi Daniel Rowe, we were both, first of all, Rabbi, thank you for being here on JTV again. Really appreciate your time. We were having a discussion, I think it was about a week ago, and you were saying that it's not just a madness, but there's actually there's a deeper rationale. Not to justify it, but there is a deeper rationale that it's really worth understanding about this hatred. And actually, it's only in understanding it that we can address it and try to tackle it head on. So I wanted to devote this conversation today to actually understanding the deeper roots of the hatred towards Israel and the Jews. And you actually saying there's something specific about the restoration of Israel, and that touches so many nerves for people on all sides of this debate. But the first thing I want to start off talking to you about is something that you said to me, which it really stuck with me. You said you've noticed that people are obsessed with this war, but the only thing that they're not covering is the war. Can you tell us what you meant by that?
Well, first of all, it's great to be here, and I hope what we say can be helpful to people, especially those struggling with what's been this sort of unleashing of waves of hatred. And also, let me start by saying none of this diminishes the pain that all of us feel. The fact that however necessary we feel this war is, there is suffering, right? There are people suffering. But the waves of hatred have been completely crazy and obsessive. And we notice that you don't have anything parallel in other conflicts. In fact, if you ask anybody in the world how many wars are going on right now in the world, the average person can't begin to answer that question. Right? How many wars right now have the most casualties? How many wars have the most starvation? Which parts of the world have the most starving people? Gaza, Gaza, Gaza. No. Gaza's got 150,000 tons of food been delivered. That's not the starving part. There's no real danger. But there's UN people screaming and shrieking. You literally go to the Democratic Republic of Congo, where there's 26 million people very close to starvation thanks to war. And, you go to Afghanistan, 20 million. In Yemen, 17 million. Right, starving as a result of war. And you can go on and on and on and on. And people have just not the foggiest clue. So there is an obsession about the war. But what I said to you about the most incredible thing is, in a war where people are obsessed about it and where it's being covered obsessively, like pretty much no other conflict, people don't know about the war. That's amazing. Normally when a war's being fought and you have this level of obsession, like those who are following Ukraine closely will know where the front line is, where the fighting is, what the new weapons are, which drones have come in, that Adivka was recently taken, right, etc., by the Russians, with the numbers of reserves, the shortages of munitions. If you're following the war obsessively, you know all these things. You talk about people about the Gaza war. Where did Israel come into Gaza from? When did it get to Jabalia? When did it knock out the main Hamas brigades? This is the real war. People look at you like, what? What is Jabalia? Which Hamas brigades? They don't know anything about the war. There's only been one story covered by the media and covered obsessively from the words go. How many civilian casualties are there? it's like a strange way to cover a war. It's like literally, and it started from the beginning. As soon as the Israelis were hitting the Hamas on October 8th, October 9th, is this disproportionate? What is disproportionate? How much is too much? It's like, it's a crazy thing. It's like wars happen. You got to destroy Hamas. But when we in the West, Britain and America, were fighting ISIS, we knew when they were getting to Raqqa, when they were getting to Mosul, what's going on at each stage, right? We also covered every so often the fact there's civilian casualties, and it's tragic, and they get caught up in the crossfire of war, especially when they've been positioned deliberately in the line of fire. But nowhere do you have, 1 second, is it too much? And then you get this ludicrous obsession at the other extreme where people start to throw out the word genocide. And I shouldn't laugh because the word is so serious. And genocide is when you try and destroy
absurd.
It's absurd. If you look at Rwanda, where literally every Tutsi who could have been killed, right, 500,000-600,000 of them were killed, hundreds of thousands were raped, right? The population was completely diminished, like 60-70% gone, and it would have been 100% if not for the counterattack by the Tutsi forces, right? You look at Srebrenica, which is much smaller, but of the males who could have been killed of the Bosniaks, pretty much all were. A third of the population was wiped out by the time, and only less because the military couldn't finish the job. In Nazi Germany, 90% of Polish Jewry, of every single Jew they could kill in Poland, in Russia, in Hungary, in Lithuania, would just kill. And then I shouldn't laugh. It's tragic that 0.65% of Gaza, according to Hamas's figures, of the civilians have been killed, right? You got to, they're claiming 27,000, 28,000. Even if you believe those figures, and even if you don't deduct the ones who die every year of natural cause, and even if you don't deduct all the ones who've been killed by Hamas's own missiles and explosives, we just deduct the military from it. And, 17,000 is a terrible, terrible number. Right, it's a horrible. We're talking less than 1% of the civilian population, and even the fact somebody could, with a straight face, throw out the word genocide, let alone take it to international courts. So yes, there is an obsession, and as I said to you, the incredible thing about this is when the Jewish army goes to war. And yes, Israel's not just Jewish; it's got Muslims and Christians and as well, but primarily it represents a Jewish state to people. When that army goes to war, essentially to protect its civilians against genocide, right? Hamas is a real threat. It showed it's a real threat. Its threat's going to get worse and worse and worse if it's not destroyed. It's not far off being able to threaten not tens of thousands, but hundreds of thousands or even millions of Israelis if it could take over the West Bank. And in a war to protect itself, that's the war where the word genocide is thrown in. It's insane. But the entire coverage of the war is not how well is Israel doing. Where's the battlefield? Is Hamas being destroyed? The only question is, 1 sec, Jewish army's gone to war. Are there too many civilian casualties? Are there too many victims of Israel? And it evokes this rage, and this is the only story. And yes, that is very, very typical of patterns throughout history of the type of demonization that happens to Jews, where, in an ordinary financial transaction, there might be winners and losers, but let's say when Jews are in an industry saying, who are the victims of that industry? Let's just focus on the victims of that industry. Oh, the Jews are the demons, these terrible people. Look, it's the worst crime ever done. That's very, very typical of anti-Jewish behavior, always.
Absolutely. And it is it's maddening on the one hand, but on the other hand, strangely, it gives me a sense of there's something deeper going on here. And this is touching on, or telling me that there's a deeper destiny that the Jewish people have in relation to the world. And that gives me cause for hope. But that also means that we therefore need to understand this and dig deeper and understand what's really going on. And so we will keep calling out all the nonsense and the hypocrisy, which is, I think, actually one of the few things that's come as a result of this that I'm grateful for, is that the clarity has really been unparalleled in terms of understanding the whole conflict, and just being seeing the nonsense claims for what they really are, whereas sometimes they would kind of hide themselves in virtue, and perhaps some of us were more believing of that. But